Okay, welcome, loyal citizens of Delane. It's nice to have you here. I got Ben is over at my house doing our first in-person recording. No, we did First Law here.
Yeah, we've done First Law.
Yeah.
That seems like a while ago.
That was one of our first episodes. But our second episode here, and it's the first time just Ben and I have been on the podcast together.
Yeah, and so if you are having a hard time telling our voices apart, then watch YouTube.
Yep. Ben has the beard. It's a good way to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
I might try and go through and post and maybe raise Ben's voice a few decimal points so
you're overcompensating.
I sound a little bit manlier. But we are here to talk about Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. We're going to start with a non-spoiler section because this is one of the smaller books. I'd say maybe not in general because I know it's probably bigger when it came out, but in terms of like our audience, I don't think a lot of people have probably read this one.
I had never heard of this book. We had some people on Discord recommend that we do a little read along with it, and sparked my interest. And so we had a good time doing that read along, and so now it's time to do the episode.
And speaking of Discord, if you are not on there, you should join. We have a lot of really good conversations. We take input from our Discord community really seriously, and you can see that they got us to do this read along. And so jump on Discord and along with follow us on all of our social media. And
we recently got into TikTok.
We did.
So I have taken on that burden. And it is a burden. I severely underestimated the stress that creating TikToks induces. So,
and be patient with us because we are, new to all the forms of media, but especially TikTok. I had never had the app before Fantology got it. I had never seen. I'd seen TikToks from like people sharing it and stuff, but
yeah.
Just a little bit more about Eyes of the Dragon. It's the 23rd book published by Stephen King. It's the 19th novel under his own name, or 19th novel, 14th written under his own name. I'm quoting all of this from Fandom, so I might be wrong, but that's what this is saying. And it was released on the February 2nd, 1987.
Yeah. So how many books has King published now?
Oh,
like hundreds? Is it hundreds?
No, it's not hundreds.
Should we ask Google?
Hey, Google, how many books has Stephen King published?
We're getting in trouble for saying that.
62 novels. Here's a summary from the website.
Okay, 62 novels and 200 short stories.
Whew.
To summarize what Google
So this is 1/3. This is like his third part of check. Yeah, 20 out of 30.
Okay.
20 out of 60. What am I saying?
So anyway, that's a little bit of background behind the book, and it's really his first dip into like epic fantasy, I would say. Well, maybe this isn't what you would call epic fantasy, but into like traditional fantasy, not his like kind of horror with some fantastical elements. This is like a full what you would typically think of fantasy.
Yeah, so this is actually my first Stephen King book, and so I know that this is a huge blind spot for me, but where does this rate from what you've read? Because you've read, a decent amount.
Yeah, so in terms of enjoyability, in terms of how it compares, or what like,
yeah, I guess like if I should I take this as a strong entry for Stephen King?
So it's a very different entry. I think that it was strong in some things. Like I think that this actually has a better plot almost than a lot of Stephen King books have.
Wait, this has a better plot?
Well,
that does not induce confidence.
It has more of a rigid like plot arcs that it follows.
I see. So there's like definitely a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I would hope that happens in most stories.
Yeah, but I don't know. In King's, some of his books, like they just end. Like
I don't know actually. That's why I'm
okay.
asking you.
Well, I mean,
I assume that most books have an ending.
There are conclusions to his books,
except for Wheel of Time.
There are conclusions to his books, and they have endings. But this is more of a cathartic ending, not to like spoil it. Anyway.
Okay, fair. So it's a more traditional plot structure, and so everybody else talks about how great characters are for Stephen King, and even on the read along, people were talking about how great characters were. I didn't see that for this book. I thought most of the characters were pretty generic. Most of them felt like they were just cookie cutter characters. So if that's the case, then...
So okay, well, Stephen King played with a lot of tropes in this book, with a lot of like traditional fantasy tropes. He had like some good guys only with a twist, some bad guys only with a twist.
Really though, I didn't really see twists though.
Well, we'll talk about
there were good guys and bad guys in this book, and
No.
a medium person.
We'll talk about that in spoilers. But I mean, this was more tropey than a lot of his books. I wouldn't say that this is his best character work by a long stretch. I think that like It has some of his best character work, and Dark Tower has some of his best.
Dude, I heard a funny joke about. You want to hear this joke? It's a dad joke.
Okay, what is it?
I was in a room, and Stephen King books were being thrown around, and then it hit me.
That's a bad joke.
That's a good one.
It's a bad joke.
It's great.
Yeah. I don't know if it's his best character work. I think that his voice, like, you can definitely tell it was a Stephen King book by how authorial
Yeah.
voice came through. Do you get that? No?
So by authorial voice, I think that you're saying that like this is Stephen King inserting his own perspective, or maybe his like the way that he wants you to view the world. Like it's him inserting himself into the dialogue. Is that what you're meaning there?
Kind of, but also just his way of he has a definite way of making you feel like you are along for the ride. Like he'll spoil kind of something that's going to happen in like a few chapters.
Yeah.
And he will kind of leave things up to you to decide and determine, and like tell you he's doing that. Just the way that he as an author interacts with you as a reader, like throughout the book.
Yeah,
Like,
so it kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit, but it's done in a very intentional way. Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, okay, so that's fair. So it's maybe this book has a lot of Stephen King-isms in it, but also it plays much more into tropes, and it's kind of one of his few forays into like traditional fantasy. Okay, so I will say I'm excited to read other Stephen King books. Like this book didn't turn me off. But like, if this was like peak Stephen King, then I'll be like,
this is
the hype?
This is not peak Stephen King. I mean, talk to us on Discord about what you guys think peak Stephen King is. I think Dark Tower has been my favorite Stephen King, along with probably The Shining or It would be my other two favorites.
Okay.
And Pet Sematary has just like stuck with me because I have a toddler who like runs around. Yeah.
No
It's
spoilers. Don't spoil that. Okay, well, is it spoilers to say what universe this book is in?
So this setting, it might be spoilers, but not really. So Stephen King has a lot of different like worlds, and all of his books are connected throughout like a multiverse. And so the king in this book is named Roland, and if you have heard anything about the Dark Tower, the main character in that book is named Roland.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, what?
It's not the same Roland.
Oh.
But it's
like maybe a descendant.
It's like a
something.
descendant. Yeah. And so according to like people on Discord, and according to my little bit of like Reddit reading I did, but it's definitely in like the mid world in which a lot of the Dark Tower series takes place.
Okay, this is weird. So from what I understand of Stephen King's connected universe is like, if you're to compare it to the Cosmere, it's not like as cohesive as the Cosmere, but like it's still present. Like it still influences the characters and plots and books a little bit.
It's still definitely present. Like Flag from this book is like the main antagonist in The Stand.
Whoa!
Did you not pick up on that? I know you watched the show.
Yeah, I watched it. I don't know, man.
Its name is Flag in both of them.
Freak. It's been a while since I've seen the show.
It came out at the beginning of the year.
It was on the CBS app, and now it's the Paramount Plus app, and I haven't taken the time to download the new one.
Okay. Anyway, yes. So, Flag, and then he's also in the Dark Tower series. So, like,
So, okay. Well, so there's just like this agent of chaos that just.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And there's a few other like big bad guys that keep showing up throughout Stephen King books, as well as a few other like heroes that keep showing up. Well, we'll talk more about that in like spoilers because I don't want to spoil character arcs from this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, to finish up the spoiler section. We want to talk like. It's like how good was the world building compared to other books, and then kind of give it like a rating out of 10.
So I thought that the world building was kind of flat, and then with like moments that had extreme depth where you like felt like you were part of the world, but for the most part it felt like you were kind of contained to seeing the world through a few characters' eyes.
Yeah, that's fair. Like definitely the world was kind of the castle in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? So yeah, but then again, the story just revolved around the castle too. So I didn't feel like it would have been weird had they suddenly started talking about like politics that were involved in like some foreign land, you know. So I thought that was fine. There's nothing special there, but it definitely felt like I could roam around the castle or the dungeon or whatever, you know. So
nice. And then characters, I thought that the characters were a highlight. Didn't sound like you liked them very much.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that during spoilers. I thought they were very one-dimensional. Each character kind of had a set thing that they wanted to fulfill. Yeah. So overall, what are you saying?
So I would say overall a 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay. I'm going to 6 out of 10. Again, like I think that this is a book that I'm going to forget about in a year from now. Like if you're going to ask me a year from now, what was the main character's name? I'm not going to remember it was Peter. You know what I mean? Like and I'm not going to really care about Peter. So 6 out of 10 for me.
Okay. All right. Well, if you disagree with that and you've read it, then keep listening. But if you disagree with it and have not read it, then go read it so you can fight with Ben or I about it.
Yep.
So moving on to the spoiler section. Let's talk about the beginning of the book. I think that the beginning of the book was the weakest part for me. What do you think?
Yeah, there's like a lot of exposition, right? Like, here's this character, and here's the king, and he defeats a dragon, and here's his 2 sons, and one of them's good, one of them's not good, but also not bad. You know, like just telling and not showing. You know what I mean? A lot of telling and not showing.
Yeah, and I thought that there was a lot of setup with like Flag hating their mother for like really not a lot of reason that we could see besides the fact that she was kind of getting in the way of her influence over King Roland.
She was a strong, independent woman, and Flag does not like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, in Roland, he had kind of had somebody that he could manipulate, and then suddenly, just out of chance, right, like, out of the 3 women that he could have chosen to marry, he ended up marrying, what was her name, Sasha?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like, and she just, it seems like Flag doesn't like things he can't control, and so Sasha was definitely somebody that he could not control.
Yeah, but this is where I think that King does something like really special with his characters, because Sasha was not in the book for very long, but she influenced like so much of the book.
Yeah,
like she had like one scene where she talked to Peter and made such an indelible impact on him that it guided the rest of his life. Like gave him the key to trying to get out of the tower, and then actually succeeding in getting out of the tower, and taught him like all the valuable lessons that he needed in order to be a good king.
Yeah, so I will agree that that's cool, but like at the same time, that felt very forced to me. It's like we're gonna have a whole chapter that's just the mother imparting wisdom upon the child, and the child somehow using that conversation to win the day. Like it felt very like.
Well, it felt kind of storybookish because
that's what
what this is. Well, okay, so we keep referring to this as traditional fantasy, but this is more like fairy tale fantasy.
Okay.
In a sense, like this was based on more fairy tales than like traditional fantasy. so that is kind of like a fairy tale, where
Yeah, you can rephrase that. I like that. I like kind of looking at it like that. But so Sasha as a character, we can kind of get behind because she was kind of this unexpected force for good, and she loved King Roland maybe more than he deserved, but she really did. It felt like she had a genuine attraction to him, and she kind of imparted upon Peter that like whatever as king, whatever you do is right, and so you better choose good things to make right. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Quite enjoyed that. It was also interesting to me. Like, I kind of was harsher on the world building before, but it was cool to me that like we see like the king's court participating in like this revelry, almost like food fighting and burping, and like what was that about? Like, was this like a Viking society? And I mean, and she was kind of coming in from outside and teaching Peter some manners, like, but by manners, it's just like, don't be a pig.
Yeah, use a napkin. Yeah, I don't know. I think that it kind of was showing, the way I took it was that Flag was influencing things to try and descend into chaos, and he was kind of doing that slowly by like working his way out through the king's inner circle, because it didn't really seem like the rest of the society was like that. It seemed like everybody else we met,
like the butlers, like the dentist, and like everybody else kind of had their stuff together. Like the judge, like everybody was, like seemed normal. They didn't seem like they're,
yeah. So I took it that Flag was starting from the inner circle and trying to like corrupt and just not even corrupt, but like just dehumanize people. And Sasha was a force against that.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I can see that. It was kind of sad to see how she died. Like, that was pretty messed up, especially because like it gave what's the second son's name? Thomas, like such a, like made him feel terrible and kind of like caused King Roland to not like Thomas as much. I don't know. That
yeah, that was sad.
It was very sad.
Yeah, the other thing I liked about Sasha, before I move on, was that she kept like childhood innocence alive in Peter, like everything from playing with the dollhouse to the way that he treated others. I think imparted a sense of innocence to Peter.
I'm gonna say, you mentioned the dollhouse. That was, I think, my favorite part of the book. It really was. I think it did do a good job of building out the world, kind of like giving this almost fantastical thing. It did a good job of defining Queen Sasha as a character, like almost like her relationship with Roland. Like, Roland had this made for her, but she was kind of already outgrown it, but she still treasured it. And then after she died, like, that was the one thing that Roland stuck up to Flag about, was letting Peter continue to play with the dollhouse. Like, it was just kind of like, I felt like the whole plot kind of revolved around this dollhouse.
Real quick, are Peter and Thomas supposed to be biblical references?
That is a good question. I mean,
like Peter being the rock upon which like the kingdom was supposed to be built, and then Thomas being like doubting Thomas. Throwing that out there.
King, we can add us on Twitter if we're onto something.
Yeah.
If you can remember,
I'm sure.
1987 King, like what were you thinking back then?
Anyway, just an idea. So that leads us to the dynamic between Peter and Thomas. Did you think that there was a good like brotherly dynamic, a good sibling rivalry? I'll answer my own question to start. I think that this showed one of the weak spots of Peter, was that he didn't realize how Thomas was being treated. And he could have, like, for all that he stuck up for a horse or whatever, or for, he didn't stick up for his own brother. And I think that was an interesting decision.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only speak from personal experience of being the favored brother.
Yeah.
We do have other siblings, but I'm obviously the favorite twin. So I could relate to that, I'm just kidding. I think that the thing is, Peter did try to kind of bring him under his wing, like, especially with the wine. Like, I'm bringing my father wine. Would you please join me? You know what I mean? Like, So it's not like he didn't try, but he also didn't try as hard as he did, like for a random horse.
But he tried in like the sense that he didn't completely ignore his brother in like a jerky way, but he also didn't realize that his brother was in pain and like go try and help him. And so I think that was an interesting character flaw in Peter.
Yeah, I think that throughout it all, Peter was kind of unable to look past himself in a lot of ways. He had a good friend in Ben Stodd, but he was also maybe unaware of how his association with Ben might have made life harder for him in a lot of ways.
And just counted on him coming through and like risking his life for him.
Yeah. So I think, he kind of had a hard time seeing past himself. And it kind of goes back to how big of I think Peter was a pretty big Mary Sue in the fact that like he, apart from the flaws that we talked about, which were kind of second layer flaws almost, like he didn't have any readily apparent flaws. He like always said the right thing, always acted appropriately, was able to lay the smack down on like this jailer that had been around the block a time or two. He, like was able to devise a cunning way of escape with, like he was able to meditate for a week on end. Like all these things, like what prepared him for any of this? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't get to see that really, besides just a few random highlights of him being a good person previous in life. We don't really get a lot of background on him. But again, this is kind of like the fairy tale. Like the hero is a hero. Why? Because they're a hero, And that's kind of what it is with Peter too.
Yeah.
On the flip side, was Thomas too bad? Like,
he wasn't a bad boy, as the authorial voice will tell us many times.
Yeah, but could you really blame Thomas? Because he was really ignored by his father. He was obviously not the favorite from like a mother that clearly was capable of loving, and he didn't get that love. He wasn't a bad, he wasn't a bad boy, but he just didn't get the nurturing that he needed in order to be a good boy.
Yeah. No, I think, and that was by design though. That's what I think we have to realize is that Flagg manipulated it from day one. You know what I mean? Like he saw Peter growing into this stalwart man that wouldn't take flack from Flagg, and so he decided that Thomas was going to be the person for him to manipulate. So he showed him how to spy on his father. He showed him like all these things, and it just kind of like he really like from a very young age was kind of led down this dark path. So I don't think you can blame him.
Okay, yeah, and we see that by the end of the book too. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but so some other like spoiled kings that jumped to my mind when I was kind of thinking about spoiled princes and kings was Joffrey and Prince Regal from Farseer. What did you think? Like, how would he rate from like Joffrey, like Regal? Like, is he nearly as bad as those guys?
No.
What do you think?
No way.
But he was a bad king. Like after he was made king, he like made bad decisions, and he knew that Peter was innocent, and he didn't really try and do anything about it.
Okay, that's true. I
think he was a bad guy. Like he wasn't just he actively made bad decisions that hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was more he allowed bad things to happen to good people, But he wasn't out there poisoning the king.
But he was out. But even then, he was out there like watching like citizens' heads get chopped off like day after day, so that like the streets were running blood, like red with blood, and there's a whole resistance building out in the forest. Like he wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, this was Flagg. I mean, yeah.
This is definitely a question that King wants you to consider during this book. Is like, what's the culpability of this character? Like say you've been raised from the time you're young by this psychopathic dude who's intent on destroying the kingdom. Like, what's your culpability when the kingdom starts being destroyed?
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna kind of speed through some of these other plot points. So the plans to get Peter in the tower, I mean, it was bad, right? Like you just kind of casually murdered Roland, and then like King Roland, and then kind of made it so that it looked like Peter did it.
Yeah. Like, where's Peter gonna get a poison that can freaking cook somebody from the inside?
Yeah,
You don't think that would immediately be suspicious to the king's like sorcerer? Like,
yeah, exactly.
kind of weird.
And then
I'm not buying it.
And then the only reason why he's convicted is because he starts crying.
Yeah.
After like losing his dad.
He's like emotionally traumatized.
And the thing is that King like understands that this was like a pretty weak thing, because later in the book it talks about how Pena, I forget how to pronounce this guy's name, Pena, the judge. Like it talks about how he was like, if he would have actually thought about it, then he would have realized that this is a. But not only that, but like, did nobody in the kingdom think that this was weird?
That's the thing. Kingdoms, like citizens of kingdoms, are all painted out to be like this mob of hysterical people that just go with the flow.
Yeah.
You know, of like whatever flag wants them to believe.
So this is when I mean that that the plot of King's books, like, it's never really about the plot. It's very easy to like poke holes in that plan and be like, this was not a great plan because of X, Y, and Z. And then he does it in the same book. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. This was fine for me, but it all seemed a little bit okay. We just want to move the plot along.
Yeah, for sure. And plus, I mean, then like framing him by like putting the poison in the box and then putting the box in his hiding place and then having the butler find it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like mildly, here's a way that we can kind of frame it.
Yeah, it's just like throwing something against the wall and being like, okay, we know, like, it's a foregone conclusion that Peter's going to be found guilty of this, you know, and like, how are you going to make that happen?
So moving on to the bulk of the book was Peter chilling out in the tower. What did you think of this section?
Yeah, again, this is when, I think I mentioned it before, this is when Peter really began to be like a Mary Sue for me. Like, he suddenly had like this, well, not suddenly, he meditated for however long and came up with this plan that like brilliantly tied together the only other piece of information that we have from his childhood. I guess I can't stress the important, like, how annoying it was to have like this Mary Sue character that's just suddenly able to
So you hated that. That was like a big, you hated that.
I did not enjoy that.
I didn't mind it that much. I think mainly because it's kind of just a trope.
Yeah, but like, who's not going to notice this guy sitting at a, you know, like a dollhouse for hours on end, just like making something,
Putting
like
together this rope.
he's not going to notice that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You might just think he's hunched over in the corner, and he made sure to. Again, like this, it's not meant to be. It's kind of meant to be a fairy tale. Like,
Yeah.
You don't question why, you know, Cinderella is the only foot that fits in this, you know, thing, in the little slipper. Like, it just, okay, yeah, that's what it does. That's the plot device.
Or why that so it didn't turn into a pumpkin at midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if we explain everything away as it should be a fairy tale, then I guess we can do that.
It's not just that, but I don't know. I just didn't hate that part of the book, because I thought it was, and it had enough interesting things happen, along with like him kind of winning over the jailers, him finding out the history about
this is
Delane with like the guy who
the king that was like a few hundred years old. That was I was going to ask if you thought that connected to any other element of like King books or not.
I mean it might, it didn't pop out to me. I thought it was super amazing foreshadowing, because it was like, hold this in front of Flag's eye or something, like, as you kill him, and then when we get to the end of the book,
dude, Flag, I thought Flag was dead, but apparently not. If he's popping up and does he ever, do we ever see him
eyeless? No. He's,
well, then what?
He's like a shapeshifter.
He's a shapeshifter.
He's like, you can go.
You can't get your eye shot out and not have that be a part of your character anymore.
He got
just like at anybody.
okay. Spoilers for The Stand, if both the TV show and the
Yeah. I guess.
yeah. Just think about the ending of The Stand if you've read The Stand. Like, that's.
Wait, the ending of The Stand? Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Did you not watch the last episode?
No, I've only watched like 3 or 4 episodes.
Oh.
Gosh, I
Okay.
made it to Vegas.
Okay. All right. So that explains some things. What about the plan outside of the tower? Like, did you like that with his friends assembling?
Yeah, so I thought that was cool. I mean, like, Dennis, Pena, and Ben, I enjoyed their dynamic. You know what I mean? Like, they all kind of had different reasons to love / support Peter. So I enjoyed them kind of teaming up, and they kind of knew at this point that like them doing these things would like put them in mortal peril, but they're willing to risk it because they knew that they all. I guess Ben wasn't as culpable, but like they're all some like Dennis was kind of culpable in his punishment because he was the one that like found the evidence, and Pena was the one that like sentenced him. Yeah, so it was cool.
Yeah, I think that it was nice to see the different motivations. Like, Pena, the judge guy, was just out of guilt mainly, and a sense of like wanting to do the right thing. And Ben was just out of love for his friend. And Dennis, partly out of guilt, but also partly because he was just a good guy and like wanted to do the right thing. And that was his like overall thing as a character, is he might not have been the smartest, but he always, like, his main purpose was to do the right thing.
Yeah. And so yeah, I also enjoyed kind of watching them try and sneak through the castle, although I didn't really understand the point of that. To be honest, like the whole escape sequence kind of confused me. I don't know if I listened to it too quickly or something, but
Escaping out of the tower?
yeah.
Well, we just don't get to that point.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so we have this group assembling of like these people coming together, and they're saying, we're going to do what we can. We don't know what we can do, but we're just going to try and make it back to the tower. We got Ben going back. Ben and Naomi team up with their dog. So they're kind of just out. They're forming up a little team to help him, which I think that this was the best part of the book, because it shows that even though Peter was very capable, as Ben would call him, a Mary Sue, he also like couldn't do it by himself. And if it weren't for his friends and if it weren't for his goodness, then he would have failed. He would have just been killed by Flag.
Yeah.
But so it wasn't how good he was, like how smart or intelligent or even hardworking he was. It was the fact that he was a good person that saved his life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was interesting how, despite being a good person, the kingdom was so ready to like turn on him and like proclaim his guilt. You know what I mean? Like, and even like Pena, like, so it's like I get that being a good person and being a good friend carries some social capital for the people that you're closest to, but like it didn't really carry any social capital for
The rest of
anything else, you know.
Well, because how do people know?
But it kind of like, you kind of have these stand-in characters for society at large. Ben being one of them, the person, the like animal person, that like he was another one. Like,
I think Dennis. I honestly think Dennis was a stand-in for somebody that's just trying to be a good person but is getting sucked along with everything else happening. I think that's Dennis's character.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's kind of an open question about how much of Ben's just like, or of Peter's innate goodness was the reason that he was rescued. I think that it definitely played a part in it, but it was also sad to see that his innate goodness didn't help him get out of the situation in the first place.
Right. That's fair. Did take people realizing how bad things could get in order for him to, like, the goodness being taken away from them. Everything goes crazy. People are being guillotined in the street, an exile resistance group forming, taxes being raised, like, what was it, 80% or something. Like just
Yeah.
you know.
Flag was not. He was not being nice to the kingdom. That is for sure.
So okay, so we get everything building up to the climax. We get Dennis, Naomi, Ben, all making it to the tower.
And then somehow Flag is just like, wait, I know what's happening.
Right. Yeah.
Vision, because of the vision and the two-headed parrot and the crystal ball.
So this is shows up in the Dark Tower. So the 13 what do they call them? There's like 13, like you said, crystal balls that all have different capabilities. We don't see all. We might see all 13 at some point, but not all 13 are very major roles. But these are important in the Stephen King universe at large. So I don't want to spoil a lot there, but they're important. So it does make sense that is like a way that that Flag was able to realize that this was coming. What did you think about Peter's whole rope plan like not working?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of a cool like subversion of expectations. Having said that, to me it just kind of seemed like a silly plan to begin with. I don't know. So like I almost didn't want it to work because I was like, there's no way he should be able to be getting away with this. So if this is actually how he escapes, it's kind of lame. And I did think that it was cool that he, you know, like Stephen King talks about how, or I guess Peter thinks about how he kind of applies the lessons that he's learned about how strong the rope is and the tensile strength of the rope. But what he didn't know is that like that strength weakens the longer the rope gets. And like, so it kind of shows the knowledge that he does have is impressive, and the fact that he's like able to hold on to this knowledge throughout his life, and kind of, you know, like what prince should really care about this tensile strength of rope, you know what I mean? But like the fact that like even that knowledge wouldn't have been enough to really do anything because it would have cost him his life in the end.
Yeah, I think that was cool. To me, the lesson I took away from it is that you can try your hardest in life and you can think that you're doing a good job,
and you still look up a flag about to
kill you, or you don't even, like, you need other people even if you think you can go at it alone. And I'm torn. I mean, the thing is that there's so much foreshadowing that this wasn't going to work, right? Like all the time King would say, implied that he was going to be falling, or implied that there's no way that he was going to be able to pull it off.
Yeah. And so, okay, and so he obviously falls, but he falls into the crate of, or the like wagon of the napkins. Is that right?
They had unloaded all the napkins, I think, into the snowbank. I think that they were unloading them, or did they just get the crate under there? Yeah, he fell into.
But was it his friends that did that?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were like cushioning his fall purposefully.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they were just like it was a happy circumstance though.
No. They like went and got all the napkins and stacked it up. So
well, that's good to hear. That's good to know.
Yeah, man.
I kind of assumed, but like it happened pretty fast. Like,
it did.
All of a sudden he's falling and he falls into like a wagon of napkin. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's the thing that happened.
Yeah, and Flag just goes like crazy at this point. I think that this was when you see really good horror writing from Stephen King is when Flag was coming up the stairs, like counting up the stairs.
That was intense.
Killing, just like chopping down guards left and right, making his way up. Peter's going to like be falling because King had just said that the like tensile strength of the rope wasn't going to be good enough to hold him. So you didn't know if he was going to fall first or if Flag was going to get up there first or if, some other thing was going to happen.
Nothing good is going to come of this sequence, like especially with the chapter switching, like, it was good. It was good. It was definitely a suspenseful part.
Yeah. And that's what I think Stephen King as a horror writer, like getting back to his roots of like just putting you on the edge of your seat and like worried for your characters living or dying, it really shines throughout that portion of the book and throughout the climax.
Okay, but then, so obviously our main character escapes, and then it's kind of weird because the book doesn't just end, right? Like,
no, so they go and they actually get resolution. They go and you get a redemption arc from Thomas. Did you think that this book needed a redemption arc for Thomas?
I'm glad that, I don't think it needed it, but I'm glad that it happened.
Okay.
Because like I said, I think Thomas was dealt, not even dealt, he was given a very crappy hand. You know, like somebody rigged the deck and gave him the crappy hand, you know. So I was happy that he was able to serve some type of, you know, he was able to give some of it back, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really cool that Thomas was the one that came in and undid Flag. Because I don't think Peter deserved to undo Flag, because Peter never fought against Flag. Really.
Yeah, he never really like had anything to do with him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty cool foreshadowing of King Roland like shooting the dragon, right?
Yeah.
And that was like his one somewhat brave moment, and kind of defined his whole kingship. And then we have Thomas doing essentially the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's the whole symbolism, through the eye of the dragon.
Yeah. Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing we have written down here. What did it deserve the title? Like, how much of a role did, like, so now we're saying the dragon represents Flag?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
I think Flag definitely represents the dragon.
Okay.
Get shot through the eye with the same pendant hanging on it that the...
Oh, yeah, that was freaking sick.
Yeah, that was some nice foreshadowing.
I think some of the best character work also came from when Thomas was spying on his father, Roland, the like, first time through the eyes of the dragon, and like the king's like Roland is like picking his nose, and like it just kind of gives you this weird like you feel like you're right there with them, and that like you're doing something wrong by like spying, and it just kind of makes you feel really icky. And I thought that was some really good character work there.
I did too. That's some great building blocks for the entire Thomas going through his entire arc, you know, starting off at that low point and then, you know, going even lower until he saw within himself that he could stand up to Flag finally.
Yeah.
And shot him. That was very satisfying. I must say, whenever villains are defeated in Stephen King books, it is very satisfying to see.
Yeah. Okay, so best of the worst?
Yeah, worst of the best.
Worst of the best.
Roll worst of the best intro. So, yeah, you can go first.
Okay. My worst of the best is Ben.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I thought that their friendship needed more than just them participating in a leg being
race.
tied together in a leg race. I thought that was kind of flimsy. I thought that the only reason why you thought that they were good friends is because you were told that they were good friends. But then Ben is like getting beaten up for this guy. He's like risking his life. He's like risking the family farm. He's, you know, willing to do all these things for Peter, and I'm just not sure that was deserved. Now, I think that's the best for all the things that we talked about before. The fact that like Ben kind of represented like all the, you know, the way that Peter was able to win people over by his like charm and his bravery and his goodness. I thought that was needed, and that Ben was able to exemplify all those things. But I just don't think that it was earned quite as much as it should have been. I thought that maybe like we spent like a whole chapter on a horse and like a few pages on a leg race between boys, and that was the foundation of the friendship. So I think that was the worst of the best for me.
I can see that. I liked Ben's character. I thought it was well done. But I can see why the friendship itself would need a little bit more. So my worst of the best would be the Exiles storyline. I think that that storyline had so much potential to be more than just they pick up one Naomi, you know, character from it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool that there's a lot of building to it, that there was going to be like maybe a whole revolution. Yeah. Storm the gates, and Peter would lead this whole revolution into like
get some real Star Wars vibes here, you know.
Yeah, or like kicking Flag out, you know, like running over the castle, and I don't know, there just seemed to be something building there that we didn't get, and I think it would have been a nice payoff. Having said that, my favorite part of the book was our little trio of characters that we had. I really liked, and
Yeah, their dynamic kind of fit together nicely.
So if we would have had somehow both of those, I just think that there was a drop storyline that had potential that we didn't get.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely wish that it kind of seemed like there might be setting up for a sequel or something. I don't know. Also, where was Flag traveling like half the time that he was gone? Was he just like putting out rebellions? Is that part of that exile storyline? I don't know.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like, to that point, it seemed like King was recognizing that people wouldn't just roll over and take this. And so he was kind of like nodding to that, you know what I mean? Without really wanting to invest in it.
Yeah.
So.
A little bit for you Dark Tower fans, you might remember that they do come across Ben and not Ben, that they come across Thomas and Dennis in their journey, just very briefly, going out to try and take Flag down. So they make a brief appearance in the Dark Tower, but there is no sequel to Eyes of the Dragon, which I would be very interested in reading a Dennis and Thomas quest to take out Flag storyline. I think that there's...
Well, is Peter just not part of the crew anymore? Or?
I mean, Peter, I think, is just going to be, in his kingdom. I don't know how much story I've left is to tell of Peter, but I think that...
What about Ben?
I don't know. Peter and Ben...
Okay.
Yeah, they could have a story.
Are you going to ship Peter and Ben?
I think that there are some definite, undertones there.
Okay.
But
I could dig it.
I think that the Thomas and Dennis going out in their adventure to take out Flag would be a really cool story that I would definitely be down for if King decides to write that.
But why were Thomas and Dennis friends? I mean,
they weren't really. It's just at the end they didn't feel like their business with Flag was finished.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thanks if you listened this far, thanks. I mean, I think as my first read in Stephen King, it wasn't my favorite book that I've read this year at all, but I'm excited to pick up the next book. So
nice. Well, jump on Discord, tell Ben what King book he should read. Maybe we should do like a Twitter poll or a Discord poll to make Ben decide which book Ben's going to read next from King. But thanks, everyone. And remember to follow us on social, Twitter. You can check out our catalog at phantologybooks.com.
Make sure you vote on the next Sidekick entry.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Phantology. If you'd like to let us know your opinions on all things sci-fi and fantasy, join our Discord. Invites are in the episode descriptions below. If you'd like to support the show, like these fine folks here, you can do that at patreon.com/phantology_books. Patrons get early access to new episodes, exclusive postings, and exclusive Discord benefits. But of course, just listening and watching and sharing with your friends and family is support enough. Journey before destination all.